So, hello. Let's start again. Hello. I'm going to try to tell you one of my true stories, one of many. So, this is 1974, summer of 1974. I was 22 years old, travelling from Spain to Cairo and back overland with my girlfriend at the time, whose name was Sue. We were travelling in a Bedford van, very nice vehicle, which we had bought in Madrid, where we had been working, teaching English for several months. We set off in May, I believe it was, from Madrid, spent a month in Portugal, then crossed over from Algeciras to, I believe, Tetuan. No, that can't be right, but it wasn't Tangier. Or maybe it was Tetuan. Anyway, a port in Morocco, travelled overland along the coast, through Morocco into Algeria, travelling very slowly, I must say. We would maybe do 30 kilometres a day. We travelled for 7 months and only covered something like 10,000 kilometres. We slept in the van every night. We cooked in or just outside the van. In those days there were a few tourists in Morocco, I think no tourists in Algeria, and only a handful of tourists in Tunisia, mainly concentrated around the popular tourist resorts which were becoming popular at the time in places like Hammamet and Hammam-Leaf and Djerba, but nothing on the scale of today. So we had, in this Bedford van, let me just describe it to you. It wasn't a very high van, you couldn't stand up inside. We had 2 seats in the front, and the back area was a floor, carpeted, a bit of old rough carpet, and a mattress, and some shelves on both sides, windows at the back as well, windows on the sides of the van at the back, as well as in the back doors. And Sue had made some little curtains, so we had a bit of privacy, and at night we would sleep there, in the back of the van. And we had been on the road by this time about 3 months. It was must have been the middle of July 1974, and we had driven as far as Tunis. We'd been to the jazz festival in Tabarka. I think it only started in 1970, so it was in the very early days then. It wasn't a very large-scale affair. But very pleasant. We stayed there about 5 days, and then putted along the coast a little bit and stayed in various little, on the roadside, outside little villages. We would cook our very simple meals of rice or pasta and some vegetables, and sometimes chat with the locals. People speak French there, of course. Anyway, we'd spent already several days in Tunis. Very interesting city, but quite demanding. And we wanted a bit of peace and quiet. So we looked on the map and we saw that there was a park just outside of Tunis, back the way that we had come, in fact, back in a westerly direction. I found it since on Google, and the park is called Nali Park. It's not huge, but it's big enough, and it was cool, and it was quiet, and from there you had a view over the city of Tunis and over the Mediterranean Sea. It was very peaceful, and we sat there sort of picnicking one day and reading and just taking it easy, and decided that we would sleep there. So got ready, everything ready in the back, in the back of the van, closed the curtains, and got undressed and got into bed. And then there was a knock at the window. So I sat up, looked out, and there was a guy there, and he said, "Donnez-moi une cigarette." So I thought, okay. So reached and gave him a cigarette through a little opening in the window. Then he said, "Donnez-moi argent," which means, of course, give me money. And I said, no. I've already given you a cigarette, that's enough. We want to go to sleep now. But he wouldn't take that. No, donnez-moi argent. And when he said that, I noticed something moving in the bushes behind him. And I realized he wasn't alone. Next thing we knew, there were either 2 or perhaps even 3 young guys banging at our windows, pulling on the handles of the 2 sliding doors either side, parallel to the driver and the passenger seats, and pulling on the back double doors as well. Fortunately, all these doors were locked, but there were 3 of them, and they were now shouting and banging and pulling hard on the handles, and it was probably only a question of time before they were going to somehow manage to pull a door open or smash a window or something. Anyway, Sue and I, what did we do? Well, we want to drive away, don't we? Yeah, we want to drive away. So, the keys. Where are the keys? The keys are in my pocket. Where's your pocket? Down there, somewhere in amongst my clothes. Well, find them. So we're rummaging around in my clothes, trying to find my trousers or shorts or whatever I was wearing in those days, to find the keys. Finally, we find the keys. Yeah. And I climb over and jump into the driver's seat. Right beside me, like about this far away, banging on the window, is this Tunisian guy. And I take the key, and I was shaking so much, I could not get the key into the ignition, into the hole. It took me seconds, it seemed like an eternity at the time, with this guy banging away at the window, and I'm shaking there like this, trying to get the key in. Eventually I got the key in. I had everything ready with the pedals, yeah? The clutch and accelerator ready to go, and in gear, ready to go, yeah? Finally got the key in, started it up. Sue ripped down the curtain across the front windscreen, and I roared ahead, and she screamed out, "Lights! Lights!" And I pulled the lights on. Right in front of us, a tree. I swerved like crazy, got onto the track, because we had pulled just off the side of the track to sleep, and zoomed down full speed. I never drove fast, but I certainly drove fast that time. And I drove out of the park, because the park is on a hill, drove down through the winding road onto the main road, and 10 kilometers or whatever it is, straight into Tunis, right into the heart of the centre. It was like maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I don't know. People on the streets, bright lights everywhere, and just parked right in the centre of town, and took a deep breath of relief. And we sat there, put our little camping stools on the pavement, and just sat there, and it was so nice to just sit there and feel safe amongst all these people walking by late at night. Well, the next day we thought, it was very nice in that park, wasn't it? I have to remember, of course, we were 22 and 23 years old, respectively. This was the first time I had ever travelled in North Africa, first time I'd ever travelled outside of Europe, first time I'd ever travelled in this way. Somewhat naive. Second day. Well, having slept in this busy street and not wanting to hang around in Tunis, but wanting more peace and quiet so we could relax and read and talk and stuff like that. So why don't we go back to that nice park? But we won't stay there. at night, of course. We wouldn't be that silly, would we? So we drive back to the park, have a very nice day, and picnicking, and actually 2 policemen came along on horseback, and we had a chat with them, all in French, of course, and asked them, or told them, about the events of the night before, and they said, well, you know, we can't patrol the park at night. The horses can't see in the dark, so it would be dangerous. So, you know, don't stay here after nightfall. No, we won't do that, definitely not. So we were in another part of the park on this second day, and it was late afternoon, and we weren't the only people there. It must have been a weekend. I feel it must have been a weekend, because there were families, which there weren't the first day, as far as I can remember, but on the second day there were other families parked around and had a blanket on the grass, and children playing and stuff like that. So we decided we are not going to be the last car to leave. So we packed up all our stuff. We were, you know, well ahead of time. Packed up our books and snacks and blanket and the football and all the whatever we had. Put it in the van. And we're sitting, both of us sitting in the back of the van, just chatting. Yeah. And in the meantime, the other vehicles had also packed up their stuff, and one by one had driven off. And we hadn't realised, because we'd been sitting there maybe 20 minutes talking, hadn't realised that we were probably the last vehicle. In fact, we were the last vehicle. And I was sitting like this, just as I am, and behind me there was a window on the side of the van. And Sue's sitting opposite me. And then she said, "What was that?" And I said, "What? What was what?" "Oh, I thought I saw something move behind you." And I thought, hello. So I climbed over into the driver's seat. The door was open. And I leaned forward and looked out and looked around to the back. And there, crouched down by the back wheel on the driver's side, was a young Tunisian guy with a knife. I looked at him. There was no time to think. I looked at him, and instinctively I let out the most almighty scream you have ever heard. And I looked this guy in the eyes and I said, "Fuck off!" And he did. And I was shaking. And I put the key in the ignition. And we drove off. I don't know where we stayed that night. I don't know where we slept that night. But we didn't sleep in the park. The third day, we didn't really want to be in the busy city of Tunis, and we didn't want to drive on eastwards towards Libya, not yet. And the park was so nice, and it was so nice to just sit and relax, and there was some shade, and you had this lovely view, and we were both reading interesting books that we were quite engrossed in, so we decided to go back to the park for the third day. This is really a true story. This is not bullshit. This is true. Sue can bear it out. So we go back, and we have another third very pleasant day in the park. And we pack up all our stuff, because we're definitely not going to be the last ones to leave this time, are we? And everything's packed, and we're sitting in the front of the vehicle. And I look, and over there's a guy. He's about 20 meters away from me, just standing there on his own. And I look in the other direction, and there's another guy, just standing there on his own. Then I look in the other direction, like out of Sue's side, out of the passenger side, and there's a third guy standing there. All of them about 15, 20 meters away from us. So I figure, don't panic. stay cool, key in the ignition, start the car, drive away. And we never, ever went back to that park. Thank you for listening.